The date is January 24th, 2022. The subject was born on the 24th of September of 1997. The time of death remains unknown. Cause for the death can be ruled as complete and utter abandonment, as it tends to be with so many cases nowadays. Currently, the subject shows little to no vital signs, barely existing between the realms. The candidate is perfect for resurrection. Igor, do bring in the subject. There is work to be done.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Retro Gaming Resurrection, a show where we take a look at the retro games from the past, see whether they're still worth visiting today, spoiler-free, and try to get them running on a modern PC platform so that they would provide you with the best possible experience they can. And this is Stealthless, and in this episode we're going to take a look at the game by the legendary Raven Software, which defied standards back in the day and tried to offer gamers something completely different than what we're used to. I am of course talking about MageSlayer. Seems like nobody managed to guess the game, so be prepared for another one near the end of this video. Released back in September 1997, MageSlayer was developed by Raven Software and published by GT Interactive exclusively for the Microsoft Windows PC platform. The game used the in-house developed Vampire engine, which provided a top-down 3D rendered world view whilst using 2D sprites for characters. The only other game ever developed on the Vampire engine that I know of was Take No Prisoners, a game which I'm sure to cover at one point in the future as well. The story of MageSlayer is a simple one, as one has come to expect from games of this era and nature. Essentially, in a fantasy world, there were radioactive meteorites which got forged into 5 powerful relics, which in turn were used by the Clan of Knowledge to defeat power-hungry mages during the Mage Wars. A legend is told that the undead Mage Lord will return to claim his revenge and take over the world. Since the Clan of Knowledge was destroyed at one point, the relics now simply reside with the defunct clans, and it is your task to essentially rip through all of the clans, claim their relics, and kill off the undead Mage Lord Wyark. At this point, I would love to talk about the gameplay, but I guess we'll have to cover the graphics of the game first, as you might notice something weird happening with the text during character selection screen. So, after the resurrection, this corruption of text was actually one of 2 graphical glitches which I was unable to iron out. The second being a tiny gap in the HUD overlay. As far as I know, this is the only place in the game where this text corruption happens, and well, due to this, I did not pay much attention to trying to get it fixed. If you have to see the text proper, you can switch over to software rendering, but more on that during the resurrection portion of this video. In any case, the game allows you to pick between 4 characters with all different stats, sprites, animations, weapons, spells, and special moves. This brings a well-deserved variety to the game, should you have the desire for replaying it more than once. And that variety is a very welcome, as this is a textbook case of a top-down hack-and-slash game. Each character gets a basic melee attack, a special AoE attack which depletes all your mana at once, gaining more power as more mana is used, plus free range spells which can all be upgraded as you progress through the dungeons. I chose to do my playthrough with the Earthlord Dwarf, and after going through the game, I feel like I mostly used only the melee and 2-letter spells, as the first spell was so underpowered that I found no real use for it. The special mana depleting AoE attack also lost its appeal as the damage output versus mana depleted during later stages of the game was way off and there was just no real reason to keep using it. Regarding level design, you will be visiting 5 different worlds with different themes in total throughout your adventure. Plus, there are even secret levels thrown into the mix, of which we need to have a serious talk of. Namely, MageSlayer is no way stranger to bugs. Even bugs which can completely screw over your progress should you not keep multiple save files at hand. The worst offender that I stumbled upon was the secret level, which is located in the world of the first real boss fight, the Rat Lord. If you happen to go through that secret level, the game would essentially create a spawn point for the portal in the vault for that location specifically, meaning that once you complete this first world and return with the relic to the hub world, the next portal you should go through will not take you to the next level. Instead, it would take you back to the Rat Lord's cave right where you left the secret level. I cannot stress enough how infuriating this can be if you don't know at this point that this is an actual bug, as there is very little information available online regarding this game. At this point, I would also like to promote this old website by Editing Grinder and the fact that it still remains online to this date, although claiming that it is no longer being maintained. It also notes some additional bugs and issues with MageSlayer and is something that you should have a read before venturing into the dungeons. Actually, the first bug that this site lists, where the lifts get stuck, yeah, I had a blast with that one as well, where I had absolutely no idea what was going on and I had to reload a prior save file to beat the Rat Lord again and then rush to the elevator in order to not miss it. Needless to say, after getting past the very first world, you are made extremely cautious of everything that the game throws at you, and should have at least 2 to 3 save slots in use constantly with various timings. Speaking of the Rat Lord and the bosses in MageSlayer, they have a pretty large health pools when tackling them at the hardest difficulty mode, which I decided to go for myself. The thing is though that the best strategy for bringing down every boss in this game, at least for the Earthlord character, is to simply run in front of them and start spamming the second spell whilst occasionally using a defensive item like health potion or magic shield. The shard spell, if every shot hits the enemy, has incredible DPS potential and is definitely the easiest way of bringing baddie down to their knees. I haven't tested this with other characters though, so take it for what it's worth. As we saw that MageSlayer is no stranger to bugs, the same can be said for the game's tendency to crash, especially whilst going through the level-changing portals in the Vault hub world. I would strongly suggest saving before stepping through any portal in this game, but especially the ones in the Vault. A known way to mitigate this bug is to change the rendering engine from direct 3D back to software rendering, then going through the portal, saving the game, and changing the render engine back to direct 3D. It is not ideal for sure, but luckily this issue does not happen that often that it would drive you crazy. Speaking of crazy, during the very last world, I encountered another bug which made my character invulnerable. I initially thought that I had somehow turned on God mode by accident, but, well, no. As it turns out, something triggered deep within the game's code and my character simply wouldn't die. As I still wanted to see the game through, I pretty much started to mad dash towards the ending, ignoring most of the enemies. At one point, though, I had to push a specific switch to call down an elevator and what do you know? And that button triggered my invulnerability to disappear as well. What an amazing button it was. I would absolutely love to hear back from someone who could debug the code and tell me what on earth was actually happening deep within the game's engine. But as for now, it's something you might also encounter should you decide to give MageSlayer a go. And a go you should give this game, especially if you have someone who agrees to go through the game with you, as MageSlayer supports cooperative gameplay over Direct Connect, modem and TCP over IP connections. Yes, you can go through the entirety of the game with your buddy, which is an absolute blast. Saving is also supported, and should that not be enough, there is also a simple deathmatch, capture the flag, my apologies, capture the relic modes to keep you busy on your local LAN party. As much as I do love playing with myself, I guess it's finally time to go out and find someone to play this game with. Getting MageSlayer to run on modern systems is really not that big of a deal as it might initially look out to be, and the process is pretty similar for both Windows and Linux-based systems. A thing which probably stands out most during the whole process is that you don't actually install the game via normal means, on Windows at least, but rather simply copy over the MageSlayer directory from the CD to wherever you wish to keep the game located on your local drive. You will still run into an issue of having to keep the disk in your CD-ROM drive, but for that we can simply rip the whole CD into an image and use something like virtual clone drive to keep the image mounted. The game itself is luckily not picky about mounting, and as long as you have it on a virtual drive, you're good. So for Windows 11, once you have the install directory ready and the files copied over, you should update the game itself to its latest official version, which is 1.1. Since this is a rather rare game to see covered, finding the patch for it isn't really as easy as it could be, so I shall leave the patch download link in the description box below. After the update, you would want to download the PEIXOTO, let's call it PEIXOTO, Pixel Patch, yeah, let's call it Pixel Patch, which is essentially a small program containing various patches, fixes and improvements for old PC games, and helps out a lot when trying to get some rare games running on modern systems. Simply extract it to whatever you feel comfortable with and start it via PEIXOTO pixel.bat. At first, this program might look like a lot to take in, but no worries, it isn't actually that bad once you start digging around in it a bit. Select MageSlayer from the list, and once you hit play, you are asked to point the program towards MageSlayer.exe executable file. The default settings will work for most people, and the game will in fact run in the direct 3D rendering mode. Next, we would like the CD audio to properly work. For that, we would need to rip the MageSlayer CD tracks to our disk and place them directly in the root of the installation folder. The naming convention is noted in the PEIXOTO's patch sound tab, but for completion's sake it is also shown on the screen. Once this is done, enable the MCI emulation option and the music should be working now. The game is starting to look great, but now there is one additional annoyance which you might have noticed, namely whatever gets drawn on the sides of the game area remains on the screen until being overwritten by something else. This is not a big deal for many, but for us OLED users, this is a problem. After some testing, I have found the easiest workaround to be enabling integer scaling under super sampling in the Advanced Graphical Settings tab of PEIXOTO's patch. Once enabled, the size of the screen properly refresh as well and won't keep the once drawn items on the screen. Now moving on to Linux side of things, we won't be using a Lutris installer this time around, as MageSlayer is such an obsolete title that it has not been added to its databases. Instead, we shall manually create a fresh 32-bit Wine prefix for the game and configure Lutris to use that one for the easier Wine settings management. Although MageSlayer's original installer starts up in Wine, it actually crashes during the setup process. So the best way to go about this is to use the same method which we used in Windows and simply copy over the MageSlayer directory to the created wine prefix. Once the game folder is ready, there is some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the game runs perfectly fine without any modifications needed, and even the direct 3D mode switch works great. The bad news is that since PEIXOTO's patch does not work through Wine, we cannot use that to render the game world in 4K. Instead, we are stuck using the maximum resolution of 800 by 600, which is the original in-game maximum supported resolution. Still, with that being said, as we are using Proton's FS hack to upscale the image across the native screen dimensions, in all actuality, it looks good. Since the sprites are of lower quality anyways, having the world render in a softer and smaller resolution is really not that distracting at all. What could be considered distracting though is the fact that whatever I tried under Linux using Wine, I was unable to get the game running without having the original disk in the CD-ROM drive. I tried multiple ways of mounting the disk image and trying to feed it through the Wine, but the game simply wouldn't have any of it. Maybe I'm missing something here, but simply because of that, I would prefer playing MageSlayer under Windows, as the CD slowdowns and wear and tear are something which I'm really not a big fan of. In any case, the game itself both works and looks great under both Linux and Windows, but there are just some caveats in getting it to run properly under Linux. So, to sum it up, MageSlayer is an excellent relic from the past with some rough edges to it. This should not waver you from giving it a go though, as the gameplay experience is pretty addictive and it flows nicely for a hack-and-slash game. If you find someone who agrees to come along for the ride and play it cooperatively with you, then you are surely going to have a good time. The game is abandonware and can be acquired with a quick Google search. Dual cases can go around 10 to 20 euros, and if you wish to get your hands on a fully boxed copy, then that one is starting to raise in price. And you can expect to pay anywhere between 40 to 240 euros for it, depending on the condition. Anyways, that wraps up this episode of Retro Gaming Resurrection. Next up, we're going to take a look at a helicopter flight combat game from 1997, which received big praise back in the day for its use of full motion video. The missions were very long, and you would also be able to pilot other vehicles in the game from time to time. If you have an idea, you might know which game it is. Leave your guess down in the comments below. But until that time comes, I would like to thank you all very much for watching, and may you have a lovely rest of your day. Whenever, wherever you are. Bye bye.